GPS, a series of events in America have brought back to the fore an issue that just doesn't go away, the struggle between African Americans and law enforcement. My next guest says it is because the United States is a post-genocidal society that has not come to terms with its past. Strong words, but worth listening to.
It's 14th at 10 on CNN.
It has been a rough few weeks in the United States for relations between African Americans and the police. Lives have been lost on both sides of the conflict. The police feel unsupported, and the series of caught-on-tape shootings of black suspects have once again raised the uncomfortable question: is the criminal justice system rigged against African Americans? To help us understand, I recently talked to a man who fights hard to reform that system and has written a heartbreaking book about it, Just Mercy. Bryan Stevenson is the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative and a law professor at NYU. For his work, Stevenson has won a MacArthur Genius Grant, amongst many other honors. Listen in. Bryan, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
I want you to tell the story, really what got you involved in this crusade that you were on. You're a young lawyer, and you decide to get involved in the case of a guy, Walter McMillan, who was wrongly accused of murder and on death row when you met him, in a town that ironically was the town that is supposed to be the place where To Kill a Mockingbird was set, right?
Yes.
Harper Lee's birthday.
That's right. Well, I think it was that disconnect that really got my attention. When I finished law school, I was shocked to know that there were people on death row literally dying for legal assistance. We don't provide lawyers to even condemned prisoners. And I met Walter McMillan in Alabama. He was convicted of a crime that took place in Monroeville, the very community where Harper Lee grew up, and wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. And that community loves the story. They romanticize it, they celebrate it, they put on plays about it, and yet they were completely indifferent to the plight of a black man, wrongly accused of killing a young white woman, convicted in a trial that lasted a day and a half. The jury returned a verdict of life, but judges in Alabama, elected judges in Alabama, have the authority to override jury verdicts of life and impose the death penalty. And so the judge, whose name was Robert E. Lee Key, overrode the jury's verdict, imposed the death penalty for a crime this man did not commit. And it was a challenging case because he was with many people when the crime took place. The entire black community knew he was innocent, but because they were there with him, they felt convicted, they felt condemned. And I think what we have done in this country with mass incarceration, with excessive punishment, is not just incarcerate a lot of people, convict a lot of people, condemn a lot of people, but we have marginalized whole communities. We have demoralized whole communities. In Walter McMillan's case, tells that story. We fought for 6 years to win his freedom. Ultimately, the evidence came forward, and he walked out free.
And you point out that in 1972, American incarceration rates compared to European countries, and it looks pretty normal.
Yes.
And then it just skyrockets.
Yes, that's right. Throughout most of the 20th century, our level of incarceration was relatively steady. We averaged somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 people. But in the late 70s, when this war on drugs kicked in that had been declared by Richard Nixon, we see the beginning of an era which has defined us as a society that is one of the most punitive in human history. We now have the highest rate of incarceration in the world. We went from 300,000 people in jails and prisons to 2.3 million people in jails and prisons. We have 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's imprisoned. 6 million people on probation or parole, 70 million Americans with criminal arrest.
And the racial component